You know what you're doing. No looking back now.
No looking back now.
And then once that's done, you can just close that tab. So once that progress
This tab
bar
right
gets all
here?
the way over, so it'll splash into like a YouTube page. So
Okay.
now you can close it. So you're all set.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, they can hear me.
Hi, Doreen.
Okay, here we go.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the September 9th, 2020 Scarborough Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. This is a hybrid meeting tonight. We have a couple members here in person and the rest are remote, attending virtually. If you want to view the meeting, you can always attend and view, or you can view via YouTube, or if you want to attend and comment, you can go to the town website and find the link through the town calendar. Public is going to be muted and must raise their hand to be called on during the public comment section when it comes during the appeal. I believe the chat feature is disabled, so you cannot chat. And there will be no new appeals that we will hear before 10:30 this evening. So as you know, this is a public proceeding. Unless the board specifically votes to go into, oh wait, do we need to do the Pledge of Allegiance first?
You can finish what you're doing. We can do the Pledge of Allegiance right afterwards.
Okay.
Keep going.
The public has the right to hear everything that is being said and to view all the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chair if you are unable to hear or see the proceedings. The board works from a prepared agenda and will take up the items in the following order. We are actually going to be rearranging the agenda and moving the approval of the minutes from June and July and the finding of facts to the end of the meeting when we have a quorum. And then we have 3 other appeals this evening. Or no, we have 1 extension request for 14 Kent Street. And then we have the appeal for the Lighthouse Suites at Pine Point, which is 3 King Street. Special section appeal for 34 Glendale Circle. And we have a special exemption appeal for 21 Snow Road. And appeal number 2695 for 9 Pinewood Circle has requested to be tabled. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate the compliance with each of the criteria of the provisions of the applicable appeal. The board will ask questions as necessary to understand the nature of the appeal as fully as possible. When all testimony has been heard, the chair will close the record and the board will adopt finding of facts for each criteria of the appeal and vote to determine if the applicant has met the burden of proof necessary to meet the criteria. It is important to note that if any of the appeal or special exception criteria have not been met, the board must deny the appeal or application. In many cases, the applicant or the landowner may have personal problems which prompted the request for the variance. Please understand that this is not legally relevant to the appeal, no matter how sympathetic the board may be to the applicant's situation. After the board votes on the merits of each criteria, a motion may be made to approve the appeal, and if there is a second, discussion will follow. The board will then state conclusions of law based on the findings of facts to support a decision on the motion. A general vote will then take place on the appeal. If the majority of the voting members present vote in the affirmative, then the appeal is approved. If a majority of the voting members vote in the negative, the appeal is denied. The board's decision stands as of the date of the vote was taken, regardless of the approval of the final written decision. And generally speaking, appeals from adverse decisions must be filed with the Superior Court within 45 days of the decision. Again, we remind everyone that this is a public proceeding and you have the right to hear, see what is happening. All persons speaking will be asked to first state their name and address and affiliation, and all board members and interested parties are asked to direct their questions through the chair. I'll now ask you to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So we're going to jump right down here to, first we had a 6-month extension request for the variance appeal for 14th Street that was approved on February 12th, 2020. And Mr. Longstaff, if you want to just tell us what's going on here real quick.
Yes, so they submitted a letter requesting an extension due to the COVID crisis. There was some problems selling their home, which they had planned to sell a little quicker than they could. And then, of course, the whole contractor issue backed up, and now it's just basically COVID related, and they're just behind schedule, and they know they won't be able to get in the ground, within 6 months of the approval. So it seems reasonable given the state of affairs.
Yep, seems pretty reasonable and straightforward. So all in favor of granting a 6-month extension, or do I have a motion? Excuse me.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to grant a 6-month extension of this appeal.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, so,
Roll call it.
Roll
You're
call.
gonna have to do a roll call.
okay. So Mr. Hebert,
I vote yes.
Mr. Bork,
Yes.
and Ms. Torrens.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So they have their 6-month extension. Okay, so we have appeal number 2692, which is a miscellaneous appeal for the property at 3 King Street, which is known as the Lighthouse Suites at Pine Point. I don't know if Brian, if you first want to give us a little information and background on this one.
Sure. So the Lighthouse Suites at Pine Point is a non-conforming residential hotel motel use in the R4A district. It was originally a 22-unit hotel motel. They received several site plan amendments, and the latest was in 2015 to convert the 22 units into 9 privately owned hotel motel units that were basically a condo-tel. The appellant now wishes to convert the 9 privately owned hotel motel units into 9 privately owned dwelling units within a multifamily building, also a non-conforming use in the R4A. So they're applying for a miscellaneous appeal to convert one non-conforming use to another non-conforming use. I'm sure the applicants will go into more detail.
All right, thank you. So I think we can see that we have Peter Truman and Nicholas Truman in attendance with their attorney, Jean Libby. Is that correct?
Yes, this is Gene Libby speaking.
Good evening, Mr. Libby.
Good evening.
Thank you for your application and the background and the exhibits, all very helpful. We really appreciate people giving us thorough applications because I feel like hopefully makes the this process go faster when the board has had all the information in front of them like this. So I don't know if you want to give us a little more information on what Mr. Longstaff said before we dive into the actual application for the special exception.
Certainly. This is a special exception application after an advisory opinion by the planning board, which unanimously voted in favor of the project. Currently, the Lighthouse Suites at Pine Point operates 9 condo hotel units. One of those units is privately owned. The other 8 units are still owned by the declarant, and the declarants are both Peter and Nicholas Truman. The proposal is to convert the 9 commercial condo hotel units to 9 residential condo units, similar to a number of other properties in the area of the Lighthouse Suites, to dissolve the commercial operating company so that what is left would be 9 privately owned condominiums, which are no longer rented to the transient public as hotel rooms. The conversion standards are that the impacts on the neighborhood will not be substantially different or greater than the impacts and effects of the non-conforming use before the conversion. And we also need to meet the special exception standards in section 4, paragraph I-4. And I will address those individually if the board thinks it's helpful. But in this case, history has repeated itself because back in 2012, the Trumans applied for a conversion of the 22-room hotel to 8 condominium units. The planning board approved that application and the approval is attached to the application as Exhibit E in July of 2012. However, the Trumans did not proceed with that project due to financing reasons. In 2015, the Trumans converted the 22-unit condo motel into 9 units. Those conversions were approved with an occupancy permit by the town in 2016, which is included in your packet as Exhibit B. Currently, the condominium has been operating as a hotel since 2016. There are 22 parking spaces at the hotel, 2 per unit, 3 for the penthouse, 1 handicap and 3 guests. Pursuant to conditions already imposed in the development, the parking for the condominium is on the opposite edge of the lot so that there is no parking in front of the condominium units. The fire department requested, and that is a fire lane. During the conversion, the building was fully sprinkled, which had not existed before. And all of the units have up-to-date current life safety measures in all of the units. The special exceptions I think are easily satisfied because the Trumans have been operating on this property without difficulty since the town approved the occupancy permit in 2016. The effect of the conversion will reduce the intensity of the use because as opposed to being open to rental to the public, there will only be 9 residential units. So the use of those units will decrease, the traffic will decrease, the pedestrian traffic will decrease. Would it be helpful to address the special exceptions? All of those were addressed by the planning board in 2012 and found to be compliant, and I've attached that as Exhibit F. But I will address each one if the board thinks that would be helpful.
Yeah, so what we'll do now, Mr. Libby, is we will go through the application that you submitted for this evening. And just, I mean, you can simply just read in the answers if you want. We need and elaborate if you so please. So if that's all right with you, I'll go ahead and read them.
Certainly.
Okay. So A, the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reason of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation.
The property is on public sewer and public water. Since the occupancy was approved in 2016, there have been no incidents of or concerns of sewage, emissions of air and water, or other operations of the property.
Okay. B, the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to the existing or foreseeable traffic in the vicinity.
Back in 2009, the Trumans entered into a swap of land with the town, and the town gained a public access to the beach, which had previously been owned by the Trumans. The current vehicular traffic to the property is controlled by a gate. People entering the parking area must have a card. That will continue. There is a crosswalk. Running across King Street. You can see in what is shown here the boardwalk, which is the path for the traveling public to use the right-of-way to the beach. So the traffic intensity will be decreased. The public gate will be used to control ingress and egress of the traffic from the lot, but the traffic use should decrease because all of the units will be under private ownership.
Right. Okay. C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree in municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood.
Well, you can see the fire department, which is at the top of the photograph, but there are no concerns with public safety. There have been no public safety calls, to my knowledge, to the property, and as indicated, the property has up-to-date fire safety installations in each room.
Okay. D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies.
Again, the water supply is public. There is no sedimentation or erosion related to the existing property or the property that was converted in 2015. Most of the rainwater is contained on the property through catch basins and whatnot when the property was converted from 22 to 9 units in 2015.
Right. Okay. E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development.
This is a non-conforming use, but the non-conforming use previously was a hotel and then a condo hotel. So we're decreasing the use by making them 9 private residences. I think you can see the size of the property compared to the residences on Claudia Way, which is to the left of the parking lot. If you moved down King Street, there are 2 condominium that exist. One is the Atlantic House. It's a little further down. Right there. And then across the street is the Moorings, which is formerly a cottage rental business that has been converted to private condominiums. If we go out onto East Grand Avenue, traveling towards Old Orchard Beach, there are 2 other condominiums, one beside the old Conroy Garage on East Grand Avenue, and one a little further down. So it will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood. The physical size, the visual impact are all the same as they have been since the property was originally constructed well before the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Thank you. And F, is the property located in the shoreline zone?
I don't believe the property is located in the shoreland zone. I provided you the plan for the conversion in 2012, and the 250-foot shoreland zone is marked. And while it comes to the edge of the property, I don't believe it's physically on the property unless there's been a change in the map. But at least when it was surveyed for the 2012 project, it was outside of the 250-foot shoreland zone, and that's shown on Exhibit C.
Mr. Longstaff, any thoughts?
What's that?
Is it in the shoreland?
It is, the hotel itself is not in the show.
Okay.
shoreline zone.
All right, G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use.
And I think that is self-affecting because the conversion has took place in 2015 and the facility has been in its present form and operating since that time.
Okay. H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section.
And again, I think that would be the same answer. The building has been in existence and operating now for 4 years, and the applicants can comply with whatever condition the zoning board believes would be appropriate given the ongoing operation of the facility.
Okay. And I, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation.
Because the commercial use of the property is being discontinued, there will be no transient traffic. So there will be no hours of operation. There'll simply be private residences and noise because of less traffic will be less, if at all, a concern. There have not been any noise complaints to my knowledge since the property was converted.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant at this time?
I have a question. So you stated earlier that you didn't pursue this change in 2012 due to financial constraints. Can you explain a little bit more what changed between then and now and how you're able to do it now?
Well, there were the financial circumstances for the Trumans, and there were some federal housing authority limitations attached to condominium developments, which the Trumans Bank, Saco and Biddeford Savings Bank, which financed the conversion in 2015, were not comfortable with in 2012. I didn't go back to refresh myself on the details of that, but from a 20,000 level, that was the problem that convinced the Trumans not to go through with the project in 2012. Sure.
I guess another question I have. So right now it's operating as a sort of a month-to-month or long-term hotel, condo, motel, apartment situation. You're looking just to convert this to 9 units for a single owner for each unit, people there who are going to be living in the town and so on.
That's correct.
Okay.
Do you have any other board members with questions? Yes, Ms. Torrens.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't working there. Is there going to be any on-site management at all after this has happened? I've seen multiple situations where this type of thing has happened in other areas, and there's been a rental program or something like that, some kind of property management company that also oversees any of that. And I know that was one of the concerns that we had in a letter from the public. So
There will not be.
Okay.
There will be no on-site management.
So will there not be, following up with that, will there not be like a monthly condo association fee? Or any kind of maintenance for like snow plowing or anything like that?
Certainly there will. The way that would work, once enough of the units are sold, the declarant would be required under Maine's condominium law to notify the owners, who would form an association. And then the owners would adopt a budget to cover common expenses, one of which would be snow plowing.
And in that, I'll say a housing agreement that could potentially be put together, could the owners of the units also include a budget to hire someone to perform regular maintenance on this if they wanted to? Is that a possibility?
Well, I don't think it's a possibility. I think it's a probability because under Maine condominium law, the owners generally own from the studs inside, and the association owns and has responsibility for maintenance of the outside. To carry out that responsibility, the association has a budget and a capital account and uses those funds to repair, ongoing repairs, and for capital improvements that may be necessary. For instance, if there was a problem with the roof or something of that nature. So it becomes an association responsibility. The association will collect dues. The association is managed independent of the declarant, who will then surrender control to the owners of the property.
So I guess for my own clarity, as soon as a certain amount of units are purchased, that triggers state requirements in order to go forward with an association fee and this infrastructure to set up to potentially monitor and maintain these units as agreed upon by the owners?
Yes, the declarant, in this case, the Trumans, are required to notify the owners of the property under state law that the owners need to form an association. At that time, the association inspects the property, and then there is a formal transfer of control of the property from the declarant to the individual, to the association and the individual owners.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Do we have any other questions, Mr. Borg?
Okay, my mic's on, thank you. My question is regarding the condominium association agreement that we see as one of the appendices. Somewhere in there it states that there is a minimum rental of period. If I'm not mistaken, it's 180 days. Is that correct?
I believe it's 185, sir, but you are correct.
Okay, so once a new condominium association is formed, could the association modify that? Or would that stay in place?
Well, no, that would not stay in place. The town imposed those restrictions because the property was operating as a hotel condo. Now that the property will be sold as private residences, there will be no limitations on the occupancy by the private owners of a unit.
So you could have absentee owners, is that correct?
Absentee owners, meaning people who own the property but only use it part-time, sir?
Or not at all?
You may have both, yes.
So this could be investment property for some, if not all the owners?
It could be summer property, it could be year-round property. It would depend on what the individual goal of the purchasers were.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's certainly something we need to know. Okay, that's the only question I had. Well, wait a minute, I did have one more. There was an allegation that property taxes were in arrears. Could you please address that?
I couldn't, sir, because I don't know, as I'm talking to you, whether property taxes are in arrears or not in arrears. That's simply information I don't know. What I do know is that one of the reasons the Truman started this process is because the town began taxing each unit as private residences as opposed to commercial transient hotels. So the town has been assessing the property as private residences as opposed to commercial hotels. But I can't speak, because I just don't know, sir, about whether the property taxes are current or not current, but I don't think that would be a factor in the standards that the board would be applying.
Well, on item H, it does refer to financial ability to meet standards. And if the owners are currently in arrears, then that certainly is something we need to consider. So I'll address this to Brian Longstaff. Brian, do you know whether or not taxes are up to date?
I do not.
Okay.
Well, Ms. Torrens, yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
I was waiting for the break. I'm not concerned about if there's a tax liability, if they're in the process of trying to sell these off, in order to clear the title, any tax liens are going to need to be settled. So back taxes will be paid prior to anything else being able to be transferred. That's the way real estate has to work.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be concerned by if there is a back tax situation. And I believe that all of these, there's not any further money going into preparing these units. I think they're already being sold as they are now, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
So and I've actually, been kind of keeping an eye on what's going on with there. I'm not concerned about the tax situation not being resolved, because in order to sell these, it would have to be resolved.
Yep. Thank you. Was there anything else, Mr. Bork? You're muted, Mr. Bork. Are you still talking? There you go.
I'm sorry, I apologize for that. Yes, thank you, Melinda. The reason I asked that question is to elicit your response, or somebody's response, so that we could clear the air that that's irrelevant. So
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from any board members before I open this up to the public? I know Mr. Karen has joined us later. I know that he has thoroughly reviewed the information, just like everyone else. I don't know if you have any questions, Mr. Karen. Are you still there? I can't see you.
I'm sorry.
That's
I'll stop
okay.
sharing. I was
There.
trying to find a few documents in there and I can't seem to put my cursor on them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm all set at this time.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure before we open it up to the public. So what I'm going to do now, Mr. Libby and Mr. Truman here, is I'm going to close down this section and I'm going to now open it up to the public. And first we'll see if there is anyone attending virtually here tonight that wanted to speak. I believe you have to put your hand up. Doesn't look like there's a lot of people.
I say, is Mr. Longstaff, I'm assuming Jay is listening.
Doreen's.
So Doreen is
Yeah.
in.
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh, we have an attendee with a hand up.
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like
James Kavanaugh.
James Kavanaugh would like to speak.
Yes, good evening. I just had a few questions I wanted to ask. I didn't know if I could just submit them online or if I needed to speak to them now, or how you want to submit them.
This is the public comment section. So what you can do is make any comments you want. You can't ask questions of any of the applicants. You could try to ask some questions of us maybe, but really it's just a comment section.
Okay, very good. So we are in a butter. We are concerned about the change in use, not necessarily from the change of use specifically, but just some of the comments that have been made regarding the usage of the units. And one of the things that we were concerned about is, would there be restrictions on the condominium documents that would preclude the owners from having short-term rentals, such as Airbnb type use, with absentee owners and no on-site management? That can be very problematic, as we all know.
Yeah.
And so we have that concern as abutters to the change of use in the property with no oversight from that standpoint. Also, we're curious if there would be school-age children allowed to live in the units, as they are residential units, and just wondering if that was something that the ZBA had considered in its findings or discussions relative to school bus usage and that type of component. And also was curious, just from a standpoint of restriction on age of use or number of residents per dwelling, just simply because these are smaller units. It's a beautiful, well-maintained property. It's a good neighbor to us, and we're just concerned about the long-term impacts could potentially unfold. And so my comments are really to ask the ZBA to consider looking at these issues from a standpoint of imposing deed restrictions potentially that might limit occupancy of dwellings, or at least at a minimum protect against the length of required minimum stay for a rental period, which is very typical in a lot of this type of condominium usage where they have a minimum 6-month term. And so absentee ownership of investment properties of this type that are going into Airbnb in that category are very problematic and a concern for us as an abutter.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. I appreciate you speaking.
Thank you.
Okay. Doesn't look like we have anyone else, but we do have some letters, or I guess emails, that we have received. Not quite sure I'm going to be able to go through and read all of these into the record, should I?
One of them is very lengthy. I would just say that it is part of the record.
Okay.
And it is here. It's in opposition.
that we have reviewed, because we all have it.
Okay.
And we all
Okay.
have it. If someone wants to speak to it, they can, but to read it would be cumbersome. It's very, very long. But it is part of the record, as are other emails that we received, both in favor and opposed to the application.
Okay, so I'll briefly go over these so the residents of Scarborough can know that we've received all of their emails and their information. First, I do want to address the complete packet and the information that we received from the Pine Point, what is it called? Residents Association?
Yes.
Pine Point Resident Association, I don't even see it on here. They submitted a lot of information, which I appreciate. As I've said before, we always appreciate people giving information to us before so we can look at it. I know my board members, and I know that we have all looked at it. I took the time to review the information that they submitted, and I did go and look at the websites and links and things like that. So I just wanted those members to know this evening that we did receive all of their concerns in regards to this. I do feel like the applicants tonight did sort of maybe address some of the reasons as to why this was postponed till now. We received an email from Rock Rodri, which is at 6 Claudia Way. He's been a resident for 11 years and he's been very impressed with the maintenance of the motel and how they've been taking care of it. And he wrote in support. Received an email from Sue Hamill, who expressed one concern about growth and impact fees, which is planning. And so that is on the record, and I believe some of her concerns have been addressed. Received another one from John Bergeron for 50 Stevens Landing. In support, telling how well the property has been maintained in the condominiums. And he's seen the property and they've done a good job and he's in favor of it. Received an email from Dave Javieri. I want to say, I apologize. This is, my home is Claudia Way, 375 Pine Point Road. And he wrote another email in support. He's lived there for the last 13 years and is pleased with the changes he has seen on the property. And that was it. Okay, so that was what we got. It looks like we had mostly people who were pleased with the maintenance of the property and how it's been maintained over the years.
There were, Madam Chair, there were some additional emails received prior to the planning board advisory opinion. Many of those were not in support of the project. I just want to, I want to make that known. To some of the concerns that have been expressed, particularly with regard to growth and density, we are looking at that. And that is an issue that will be, I think, addressed. So I think, in all fairness, there will be some impact fees that will need to be paid, just as any new single-family dwelling would have to pay. So I believe that's the direction we're heading. I can't say for sure because it's too premature at this point to say.
Right, and I think it's, the lines cross a little bit between planning and zoning, and I think so sometimes, those sort of things actually don't really impact us and what the decision is that we're making here tonight.
I think the other thing that if I may, that might be a concern, and I've heard it sort of hit upon a few times tonight, prior to this request, they were limited to basically 6 months of the year they could use, they could occupy that. But that didn't mean that all the units couldn't be occupied 365 days of the year. So this is really no different. It's just a different way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to make that clear.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so if there's no one else attending, I don't see any other hands raised.
Is anybody here would like to speak on it?
Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing. I know, and I see Mr. Truman's hands up. We're going to go into the finding of facts and conclusions of law at this point. I'm not sure if there's anything really super important.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I guess I'll add, as we're flipping to the page to get into it, we're looking at these standards for special exceptions, and we need to evaluate, again, and also for the viewers at home listening in, we evaluate each of these applications based on the information that we have and their answers to the questions, the information that they provide to them.
Yes. Thank you. So what I'm going to do now with the board is we're going to go down through the criteria and do our findings of fact. So the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reasons of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation. Mr. Bork?
Agreed, no change whatsoever. If anything, it should be somewhat reduced.
Mr. Karen? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, nothing further to add.
Thank you. Ms. Torrance?
Yeah, I don't think the use is changing enough to have any significant impact.
Mr. Hebert?
Important to note here where the question, the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reusing of additional sewage, disposal, water, air. They're not looking to increase the number of the units on this location. There's still going to be 9 units, all of them with their own bathrooms and kitchenettes. And the use there will be the same. They're not looking to add additional units to this space. So I would agree that they've met this requirement.
I agree as well. So we all in favor of A. Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
and Mr. Hebert.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. B, the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to the existing or foreseeable traffic in its vicinity. Mr. Bork,
It will not increase the traffic at all. In fact, during the summer months, it might actually decrease it compared to what it has been as when these were rental units.
thank you. Mr. Karen,
Agreed about the number of vehicles. I do just want to echo the concern shared by the public with regard to the age of residents and potential children and bus routes.
Ms. Torrance,
I agree with Mr. Bork. I don't see where there's going to be any increase. I think it could possibly and very likely result in a decrease.
Mr. Hebert,
I'll note on the plan that they have clearly stated what available parking that they have dedicated for these units available on site. And again, I mean, they're not looking to increase or expand their footprint to increase more vehicles or residential units to this location. So I would agree that this has been met.
thank you. So all in favor of B being met are Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems, which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree in municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood. Mr. Bork,
No change in impact whatsoever.
Mr. Karen,
With regard to public safety problems, just once again echoing the public's concern about potential users that do not have long-term commitments, such as Airbnb, but with the reduced number of occupants overall for units, not a major concern.
thank you. Ms. Torrance,
Responding to Mr. Karen's comments, I think that you would probably find that because of the seasonalness of the area, anybody who was living there for 6 months and renting their place out or vice versa, letting this happen the other way, I don't feel like there's going to be any increase in public safety issues or anything else. In fact, I think, with ownership, even with absentee ownership, there still tends to be a greater concern for who is actually using the property and how they're using it. So I think that this is perfectly fine.
thank you. Mr. Hebert,
I agree. It's an overall decrease, again, mentioned by Ms. Torrance and Mr. Karen, due to the seasonal use that's going to be going on here. It's not going to increase. There's still 9 residential units that wouldn't incur more or less municipal fire or police protection.
thank you. I agree with the board. Ms. Torrance is a realtor, and I know that she knows this stuff pretty well, so I rely on her. And I was a realtor back in the day, and I know, these, you own a property, you want to take care of it, bottom line. So, all in favor of C being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes. D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies. Mr. Bork,
No impact.
Mr. Karen,
Nothing further to add.
Ms. Torrance,
Agreed.
Mr. Hebert.
No, I mean, similar to question A, they're served by public water and public sewer. So the risk of, an accidental contamination or an erosion on water supplies is very minimal because they're on public water and sewer, not private.
Right, and what they're asking for tonight is actually no physical changes to the property, and I think we all kind of feel like there actually might be less traffic going through. So all in favor of D, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. And we have E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development. Mr. Bork,
Yeah, absolutely. There are many other condominium developments in this neighborhood, so this is no different.
Mr. Karen,
The response speaks to sightlines and views out windows, so no concern.
Ms. Torrance,
I agree with what's been said already.
Mr. Hebert.
I agree. I mean, it's a residential structure, similar to other residential structures in the area. Again, I'll mention the positive advisory opinion from the planning board as well, with their regard to this proposed adjustment to what they're looking to do here. So all things taken into consideration, I believe they're meeting this requirement.
Yes, and I appreciate the testimony given tonight about providing examples of other motels that have been converted to what they're looking to do here as well and been successful. So all in favor of E being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. And F is if it's located in the shoreland zone. And I believe they have shown us tonight that the building is not in the shoreland zone.
Right.
All in favor of F being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert.
Yes.
And I agree. With F, yes. G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use. Mr. Bork,
Yes, it's been demonstrated very clearly.
Mr. Karen,
Yes. Plenty of attachments. Nothing further to add.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes, I think that burden's been met.
Mr. Hebert,
Sorry, this mask is really itchy. Yes, they have proven that they have sufficient right and title here.
yes, they have provided a lot of information, a thorough application tonight showing this. All in favor of G being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section. Mr. Bork,
Okay. Yes, I agree.
Mr. Karen,
It was shared that any potential financial issues based on liens or otherwise would have to be taken care of prior to any sales, so no concerns here.
Ms. Torrance,
Yep, likewise, no concerns.
Mr. Hebert.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Karen. If there are any financial issues, they would have to be resolved as part of any sale of any of the units.
Right. I agree. So all in favor of H, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. H, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation. Mr. Bork.
Again, it's very compatible to other condominium developments in the neighborhood. And as a matter of fact, from going from a rental situation to residential condominium should result in less noise and so forth.
Thank you. Mr. Karen,
Yes, nothing further to add.
Ms. Torrance.
I don't think that there's going to be any concerns over this. I do want to kind of make a mention to the point that the public had made about children and that type of thing. It is not going to be something that they can, through fair housing issues, ever exclude a family with children. However, I see the price point versus the price per square foot on these units as being an economic consideration that probably most families would not make when they could actually buy a house for the same price. So, I'm not concerned about that burden at all. And I'm not concerned with that becoming, I don't think the use or the demographic that's going to be there is going to be drastically different than what has been using the property to date.
Thank you. Mr. Hebert.
I would agree with Ms. Torrens with respect to that, as you're more likely than not that you're not going to see folks buying these properties without children. However, if there were children to go into these properties, which they certainly would, the impact would be minimal to the overall system that's in place now.
Thank you. I mean, the proposed use is, I feel, more compatible with the neighborhood than what it is now. So all in favor of I being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Do you have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, a motion to approve appeal number 2692.
Motion to second.
Do we have any discussions? Okay, so all in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. The appeal approves. Congratulations. Okay. We'll give everyone a minute to get ready for the 34 Glendale Circle here. Looks like I had already seen Brittany Frisco and Ken Huntley in attendance. Brian, are there?
We're getting feedback.
No.
There we go.
Okay. Is everyone ready?
Not just,
I would say folks at home dialing in,
come on.
you'll want to make sure that your audio is turned down on your speakers if you're not using a headset. That way it'll avoid feedback going from the speakers to your microphone and back and forth, and makes the unpleasant audio sounds. Sweet.
Let me know when I can go, Brian.
The laptop decided it needed to do an update right now.
Okay.
I narrowly avoided that earlier. At about 6:30 tonight, mine wanted to update too.
Yeah, it's just that this is a dedicated laptop for this purpose, and it hasn't been updated with everything just yet. Some of the, Adobe Acrobat and some of the applications are still sort of not fully functional at this point. So it's a bit of I think we could probably get started. And just not sure I'm going to be able to display the sketch plans and some of the PDF documents.
We can intro it while that's loading, I guess.
Was you were still, your meeting was still going. So even though that was updating,
Yeah.
you could still see the meeting was still happening. I wasn't sure if you were aware of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know we're live. I'm just.
All right, so why don't we jump into 34 Glendale? So do you want to?
Sure.
So first we'll ask Mr. Longstaff from the town to give us a little bit of background on the special exception permit application.
Sure, Madam Chair. The appellant owns a single-family dwelling in a rural farm district on a conforming parcel within Sherwood Acres subdivision. The dwelling is conforming with regard to all space and bulk requirements. The appellant wants to establish a family daycare home as defined in our ordinance, allows 3 to 6 clients, child clients, no more than 6. And she wants to do it as a home occupation. It is a permitted use in the zone. If that is the sole use, if you're doing it in your home, then it becomes a home occupation. So it requires special exception approval. And also requires the applicant to demonstrate and meet the performance standards for home occupations in addition to the special exception criteria. And also there are some conditions of approval for family home daycare. So there's 3 little separate silos of conditions and performance standards that need to be met. The applicant, I believe, has gotten her pretty much on her way to getting state approval. It does have to be inspected by the state fire marshal's office as well as ourselves. And so there's a number of hoops to jump through to get licenses in place. I think at this point, we can turn it over to the applicant and let her do her presentation.
So I should have done this first. First, I wanted to disclose to the board that the applicant this evening is Brittany Frisco, and her daughter is in my son's 2nd grade class. And Brittany was pretty excited about her new home daycare. So we did, I did run into her last week. And so I just wanted to disclose to the board that I do know Brittany. And so with that being said, it looks like Brittany Frisco is here. And I think, well, Ken Huntley was here before. Are you both still here?
Yeah.
I'm here, and I think he's still here as well. We just separated rooms so that we didn't get the weird speaker echo.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, you guys did a great job. You gave us a lot of information, which we love because, so I don't know if you want to just touch briefly on anything more than what Brian already said before we dump into the application.
Yeah, so I would love to, and thank you everyone for, reviewing all of this, and especially to Brian and Doreen for working with me, as that's not always easy. I have a lot of questions and they were super helpful. So I'm just really thankful for that. Like they said, I am on my way to becoming licensed by the state. At this point, I have been inspected and approved by the state fire marshal. I have also been inspected by the state licensor, Lori Manini. At this point, all they're waiting for is the approval from the town. And as soon as I can provide that, I am good to go with my licensing. So that's pretty exciting. It's been a lot of work in the past month. And I just want to throw out that this family childcare is directed to school-age children. It's really to help with the situation that a lot of families are in right now. So I don't want other childcares in the area to think that, that I'm out there trying to get the younger kids and take from their businesses, as this is just solely something for 6 school-age children in my home per day. So thank you.
Thank you. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through all the different criteria and all the applications that you submitted this evening. Okay. So the first one that we're going to do is we're going to go through the application for the special exception. So what I'll do, Ms. Frisco, is I'm going to read the question, and then if you just want to read the answer that you provided and elaborate if you so choose. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so A, the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reasons of sewage, disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation.
The childcare would be caring for 5 school-aged children in my home, which would be for 9 hours a day, 5 days a week. The sewage system on the property has been inspected and emptied and can support this amount of use. Our household only consists of 3 people. So with 5 additional children here, there would only be 8 people using the sewage system a day. So yes.
Right, and you guys are all private septic and.
Yep.
out
Yep.
there
So it's a
and
septic
water.
system.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. B, the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to the existing or foreseeable traffic in its vicinity.
Okay, so this childcare will support 5 children that are from 3 different families. So this means no more than 3 vehicles will be in the neighborhood. Our driveway is designed so that you can turn around without backing into the street. Due to COVID-19, families will be dropping off and picking up at staggered times. Therefore, only one of these 3 vehicles will be in the neighborhood at once. And then I'd just like to elaborate a little bit too, that Glendale Drive and Glendale Circle are both one-way streets, tree lined in the middle and around a circle. So I also feel that's really helpful for safe traffic in the neighborhood.
Yeah. C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems, which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree of municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood.
So the childcare will operate in my home and backyard. The backyard is fenced and not visible from the street. The property is just over an acre with plenty of room for the sound to travel. So yeah.
Okay. D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies.
No, and the property has a filtration system, a newly inspected sewage or septic, and it's appropriate to support the need. There will be no erosion or sediment in any water.
Right. Are you making any physical changes to the outside of the property or anything like that?
Yes, so I did just receive last week approval for the dog house entry. So what that would mean is converting the bulkhead into an actual entryway into the home.
Okay. Fair enough. E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development.
Yep, it'll be solely operated in my home and on my property. And I think I've elaborated somewhere else in here that I'm not looking to put any signage or any signs, nothing like that.
Okay. F, if located in the shoreland zone. Are you in the shoreland zone?
I am not.
Okay. G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use.
Yes, so yes, childcare licensing for Scarborough. Lori Manini has been over to inspect. I've obviously applied for all of these licenses, and I have the education and background to be able to support this.
Right, and it looks like you provided the town tax card as proof of ownership.
Yeah, does that work?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, perfect.
H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section.
Yes.
I, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and operations of hours.
Yep. So yes, the hours of operation would be from 7:30 to 4:30. I think the biggest concern for people here might just be the noise of kids outdoors. That being said, I plan to have kids playing outdoors from 10 to 12, morning to afternoon, and 2 to 4 at night. Also, a lot of neighbors are at work this time, and it's also a very child-friendly neighborhood. So yes.
Are there any other home occupations or people that work from home in your neighborhood?
There are not.
No.
I mean, not that I'm aware of.
I was just gonna say, not that you're probably aware of,
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yes.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant at this time in regards to her answers to the special exception application?
I have one, just to clarify. You did, as stated here, you got a inspection from the state fire marshal, and you've been in contact with the state for childcare licensing. I guess what remaining steps are in the process for you? Like, where are you in this process right now? Is it everything?
So I'm fully approved by the fire marshal, and the state licensor has been more in contact. She's been out to my house. She spent 3 hours here earlier this week. She's provided me with a copy of the license application, which shows everything that we talked about and anything that would need to be discussed. I am happy to provide you with that per PDF, but basically my actual requirements to provide to her at this point is just the approval from the town.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Bork.
Yes, you mentioned that a bulkhead has been converted to an entrance. Does that mean that you'll be using the basement for the school?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So if Brian is able to share, I have provided him with kind of pictures throughout the process. So it is less than 20% of the home, but a portion of my basement has been converted into what will be a school room. So the children will go down there, they'll have access to the internet, they'll have access to, do their schooling. And then when they're not busy with their distance learning, I will provide them with enrichment and activities, outdoor time. Things like that. So you can see one of the images at the bottom there is with the red doors. That was the bulkhead. As of now, that is completely ripped out, and the frame is up, and the door is just waiting to be installed. So the crew's been working on that this week.
Very good, thank you. Because that's a little bit different than what the application said further on. But you said you were eventually going to do that, so you've already done that.
Yeah, so I kind of I submitted the application as soon as I could, and through working with Brian and Doreen and the state and the fire marshal, I kind of made little changes along the way, but just per what's been, recommended to me by them.
Good, this will save us time later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did any other board members have any questions before we get into the next set of criteria? I can't see you, but I'm going to go with a no.
I'll stop sharing.
That's okay. I just have to speak up. All right, so I'm operating off of the submission that she gave us. So next we're going to do the qualifications for a family daycare, home group daycare.
There we go.
So let's do that.
Did escape, Brian.
Where is it?
All right, so Ms. Frisco, we're going to do the family daycare qualifications now.
Okay, I'm just looking through to get my copy here. Is this going to be the same thing while I read my answers to you?
Exactly.
Okay, I think I have most of them in front of me to the best of my ability.
That's all right.
Now. Okay.
Number one, let's see, shall provide outdoor play or recreation area as provided by state regulations, which shall be in rear or side yards only.
Yep, the play yard is in both the rear and side yard of the property, and it is hidden by the fence.
Okay, 2, all outdoor play or recreation areas shall be fenced. If a facility is approved during winter, fencing shall be installed as soon as winter permits.
Okay, so yes, the play yard and backyard is fenced at this time so that it's not visible from the street. However, it still does need 3 remaining portions put up for the fence. I have the fence purchased in here. However, it's the same contractor that's kind of working on the bulkhead dog door right now. So it's just one project at a time. So that is going to happen as soon as possible.
Okay, so now we have, unless authorized by variance, such facilities may be located only on lots which
So
comply.
she's, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
she's in a conforming lot, so she meets that one.
Okay, so Brian's telling me you meet the
Yeah.
3rd qualification there.
Skip through those and then
Thank you.
Let's see, 5 is non-conforming lot with minimum street frontage.
yeah, she meets that.
So you have the minimum street frontage.
Yep.
So we have no such facility shall be situated in a location where the distance between the facility's driveway entrance and the driveway entrance of another child or adult daycare facility or home occupation is less than 5 minutes, the minimum street frontage requirements for the zoning district. Oh my gosh.
So there's only one driveway for my property, which will also be my home childcare, and there's no other businesses or childcares or anything of the like in that street frontage.
Yeah, I want to make sure there wasn't going to be a childcare as a neighbor right next to her or
Yeah.
down the street or in the immediate area.
No.
Great, thank you.
Okay,
You're
and it
welcome.
looks like the owner shall show the sewage disposal system fully conformed.
Madam Chair, she submitted a compliant system design with
Perfect.
her
So we
application.
have the plumbing application, which
Yes.
Brian has shown is sufficient to meet that qualification.
Thank you, Brian.
And then 6 is prohibited in multiplex units, and this is not a multi-unit, it's a single-family home.
Cool.
Correct.
Okay. Did the board have any questions for the applicant at this time in regards to those qualifications? Those are, the state pretty much makes sure you're following those as well.
Yeah, and I'll note as well, Madam Chair, she did indicate earlier that her septic system was, the sewage system on the property has been inspected, emptied, and can support the amount of use that they're proposing.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so if we don't have any questions about those, we're going to dive into the last part here, which is the performance standards for a home occupation. So I'll read through those, and if you want to answer them, Ms. Frisco, that would be great.
Okay.
Number 1, the occupation or profession shall be carried on wholly within the principal building or within a building accessory thereto.
Yes.
The home occupation shall be clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling unit for residential purposes.
Yes.
3, no more than one person who is not a resident of the dwelling unit shall be employed in the home occupation.
There will be no other employees, just myself. I'm the sole provider.
4, exterior signage shall be permitted in accordance with the home occupation sign provisions.
There will be no signs. The child care will serve local families in need. There's no intent for signs, advertisement, or anything of the like.
5, there shall be no exterior displays, no exterior storage of materials, and no other exterior indication of a home occupation or variation from the residential character of the principal building.
Yep. All materials will be stored in the home, the backyard, which is fenced and not visible from the street, and our shed.
6, no nuisance shall be generated, included but not necessarily limited to offensive noise, vibration, smoke, dust, odors, heat, or glare.
No, and then I did just want to speak to the noise of the children again. I said no nuisance will occur. Children will play outdoors during periods of the day. However, the property is on just over an acre, so the noise should not be an issue. The childcare would be open 7:30 to 4:30, which I feel are appropriate times for the children to be outside playing.
Okay, thank you. 7, the traffic generated by such home occupation shall not increase the volume of traffic so as to create a traffic hazard or disturb the residential character of the immediate neighborhood.
No, this childcare would only serve the 3 families on any given day, Monday through Friday. The families will arrive in staggered drop-off and pickup times. So there will really only be 1 additional car in the neighborhood at a time.
8, in addition to the off-street parking provided to meet the normal requirements of the dwelling, adequate off-street parking shall be provided for the vehicles of each employee and the vehicles of the maximum number of users or customers the home occupation may attract during peak operation hours.
So there will be no other employees or extra visitors. And just to add that, I did kind of want to run this daycare for this pandemic time to provide help with those kids. So I'm really not having anybody in the home that doesn't absolutely need to be.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, number 9, the home occupation may utilize no more than 20% of the dwelling unit floor, provided that the purposes of this calculation, unfinished basement and attic spaces are not included.
Yes, and I believe I provided Brian with a PDF on that, if that's something anybody's interested in seeing.
I think we saw that. I don't know if you've done any math, but
Yeah, I did the math on the upstairs that was with the original one. This is actually, I think, it's about an equal size, so I would say yes. That's meeting the 20% maximum. I can't recall now. I think it was 16% or something like that.
okay.
Yeah, I would concur with that, Brian, from what I was able to calculate on my own as well.
So you're saying she's using about 16%?
It's under the 20% that she's
It's definitely
allowed.
under 20. I'm not sure of the exact percentage.
Good enough for me.
Thank you.
Then number 10 is home occupations may include retail sales, but you're not going to be doing any retail sales, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So does the board have any questions for the applicant at this time?
I have no questions, Madam Chair.
There's a lot of criteria that we went through, but we do a lot of home business applications. So I'm not sure if, I think the applicant did a really good job and provided a lot of information. I don't really have any further questions.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the applicant for providing a thorough narrative, as well as the home occupation, as well as the daycare questions, and fully answered. That's appreciated for us.
Thank you, and I'm sorry that I kind of addressed it to the wrong people at first, but thank you.
It's all right.
Okay. Did the board have any questions? It doesn't look like anyone has any questions. It seems pretty straightforward. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close this part of the hearing and I'm going to open it up to the public. So it looks like we have someone here that would like to speak. If you want to give us your name and.
Absolutely. Good evening. My name's Heather Saraki. I live at 32 Glendale Circle, right next door to the property you're considering.
Good evening.
I would like to read into the record my comments here that I have provided electronically. Members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, we, that is my husband and I, are writing to you in strong opposition to Brittany Frisco's special exception appeal to open a home child care facility located at 34 Glendale Circle. Since 1984, for 36 years, we have lived next door at 32 Glendale Circle. As newlyweds, my husband and I chose to move to this family-friendly, quiet, residential neighborhood with the clear understanding that we were investing in a residential neighborhood with clearly defined restrictions. Please see Exhibit A, which are our bylaws, and in quotes, said premises shall be used for residential purposes only. That is the understanding under which we purchased this property. It is my understanding from speaking with someone else at the home that Ms. Frisco bought our next door neighbor's home with the initial intent of fixing it up and selling it, but she changed her mind, which is fine. We do have a very nice neighborhood. That being said, I stress again, it is residential, not business zoned. Ms. Frisco has never discussed her plans to open a business in her home with us. Thus, the postcard we received with notification of this hearing and her request was quite a surprise. This sort of exception sets a concerning precedent. If this is approved, what exceptions could be next? What happens to our property values? Since purchasing her property, Ms. Frisco has cut a number of trees between her home and ours, which somewhat diminishes our privacy. Her side yard and backyard indicate that this would be the primary location of the childcare facility. We are unsure of the reason, but she also cut and laid logs as a demarcation of sorts, perhaps to lay out a future fence, and I did provide an electronic photo of that. But again, we have had no direct communication with her. If a fence is to be installed in the future, we would prefer to have a survey done first to make sure the property lines are accurate. In the 36 years that we have lived here, our neighborhood road has never been resurfaced. It has only been patched. We had hoped that our street would finally be on the town's priority list this year, but I was told by men working on a culvert replacement done on nearby Glendale Drive by the Scarborough Public Works Department that our road would not be resurfaced this year, and they could not tell me when it would be. This was disheartening to say the least, especially since last September, our property taxes increased this time by more than 20%. The additional traffic on our already deeply cracked, well-worn road with grass growing in sinkholes and potholes directly in front of our home, which I provided that photo, is an additional concern. I do have friends who live in the next door neighborhood, which is called Springbrook. They have noted that each time new homes are built, their aquifer seems to act up. I do not know if there's been any evaluation of the aquifer, but the aquifer provides the water for all the homes in our neighborhood. And again, we're right next door. Furthermore, over the summer, there was a steady usage of a reportedly unlicensed all-terrain vehicle from her property to the 6.8 acres of commonly owned land with walking trails that surround a vernal pool. The person driving this vehicle was driving rather aggressively with the child. Thankfully, this activity stopped a few weeks ago. Regarding home child care, I inquired about options in the area involving similar home child care type facilities. For instance, Leah Kane's Precious Moments has no wait list and one opening. She was confident several others she knows in the area also had openings. I would have called more places to confirm that, but I was out of town this past weekend and this was rather short notice. Regardless, this request is in violation of the clear bylaws of our neighborhood, and the request violates Scarborough zoning ordinance, and as abutters, we strongly oppose the request. Thank you for your consideration of our concerns, and again, we urge you to deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. I appreciate it. Okay, is there anyone attending electronically, virtually that wanted to speak? I know I have one email here that I am going to read. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. This was an email that was received by the town yesterday. It's from Lisa Culpitz, who lives at, tell me where Lisa lives. Which one is she?
She's on the other side.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know which address Shrews is, but this is in response to the postcard we received in the mail in regards to the special exemption appeal application by 34 Window Circle to operate a family childcare in her home. Following are our concerns with this request. Sherwood Acres was created in 1981. It was specifically designed as a residential neighborhood. As a matter of fact, one of the deed restrictions for each property was that it would be used for residential purposes only, and it was designed with that in mind. There are still many people who live here that are the original owners and want a neighborhood free of the congestion the home business can bring. I have spoken to some neighbors that did not receive a postcard. Were you aware of this application? Traffic impact to the neighborhood could be a concern. I've witnessed firsthand parents rushing to drop off and pick up kids at school, so I can only assume it's the same with daycares. There is a small neighborhood with children playing and people walking. I hope this is considered. We are also concerned with the noise levels that a daycare would bring in a small residential neighborhood. Is there a limit of just a few children, or is it 8 or 10? There is already a home improvement business based out of 34 Glendale, and the noise level there just seems to go up and up. I have little faith that this will come without a negative impact as well. So that was from Terry and Lisa Colpetts, who received postcards, who obviously live within the vicinity.
They're on the other side. They're the other water.
Thank you. Ms. Saraki was just clarifying that the Colpetts live on the other side of Ms. Frisco. Thank you. Okay, so if we don't have any other public comments, I'm going to close it to the public, and the board is going to do the finding of facts and conclusions of law. Okay. Mr. Hebert, should we vote down these real quick and then do the special exceptions?
I would vote for all of the home occupation as one singular roll call vote.
Okay, so let's put to a vote that the applicant has met all the criteria for the family daycare home qualifications.
Yeah.
So all in favor of those being met, or does there anyone want to have a discussion?
Yeah, I guess there are any thoughts from board members on the daycare questions that were asked?
Any questions on that one? That one's pretty straightforward about the qualifications in regards to play areas and fenced areas. Do you feel they've met that, Mr. Bork?
Yes.
Mr. Karen?
Yes.
Ms. Torrance?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert?
Yes, I mean, they've provided the requirements that they need to be satisfied for the state. They've already received preliminary approval from the state. And Brian, can you correct me if I'm wrong? In this instance, home associations or agreements within neighborhoods, doesn't the town ordinance take precedent over all of those?
The town does not enforce private covenants, deed covenants, or association bylaws.
Yeah.
Those are taken care of by the association. If they want to pursue action with those, that's their business.
Mhm.
The town only enforces its ordinances and regulations.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to confirm is that we're appreciative of the comments that are being made tonight. We can only go by what is in the actual town ordinance and rate this application of whether or not they're meeting the town ordinance and those rules put in there.
Mr. Hebert, I just want to also, there was a comment made that this is against the town ordinance. That's not true. This is a special exception use application.
Yep.
Home occupations are a special exception use. You cannot do them until and unless you receive approval from the Board of Appeals. And that's what we're doing here tonight.
Yep.
We're finding out whether or not that approval will be granted. So it would be a false statement to say that it's against the ordinance. I just want to clarify that.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, the ordinance allows this to happen, assuming that they go through the special exception case, which is what we're doing here tonight.
Right.
So that being said, I do agree that the daycare criteria have been met.
Okay, and I agree as well. So that is a yes for all the family daycare home criteria being met.
Great.
So we have the performance standards for home occupation. Does the board feel comfortable voting these as a whole, or do you want to go through them individually?
I feel comfortable voting of these as a whole. And if board members want to have a comment on a particular item in here, they can say that before they.
I would just ask if anybody had any exception to any of these, took any exception.
Was there any exception, or is everyone satisfied with the information we received for the performance standards? I'm thinking yes.
Okay. Excellent.
So
roll call vote.
Mr. Bork,
Yes, I think the applicant has demonstrated that she would be in full compliance with all of the standards of a home business occupation, specifically one for childcare. And I'd also like to point out that this is not for preschool kids. This is for school-age kids, during the time they can't be in school, by current regulations of the school board. And, so it's a temporary situation due to COVID-19 restrictions. And I think this is very much needed. And if this fully meets the requirements that we need to approve.
Thank you. Mr. Karen?
Yes.
Ms. Torrance?
Yeah, I would second Mr. Bork's comments, and I would also add that, children in a neighborhood is a very common occurrence in a residential area, and this is not really going beyond that. I mean, I raised 6 kids in a small house. This is still reasonable and compatible.
Thank you.
I suppose I'll add as well, the applicant has stated that even though that they are allowed, they're not intending to have a sign because they're, again, purposefully minimizing their impact, their visual impact to their home.
Right, and my understanding, Mr. Longstaff, is if she does want to someday have more kids and expand her facility, she has to go through this whole process again.
Yeah, unfortunately, that can't even happen in this neighborhood because
Okay.
the next step up would be a group home
Okay,
daycare,
okay.
which gives you 7 to 12 clients. And it must be located on a street of a higher classification than a local street.
Okay.
And that's all this is a local street. So this is it.
Okay,
This
so
is
this
as
is
far
it.
as she
They
can
can
go.
never have more than 6 people
Exactly.
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I agree. I feel like they've met all the performance standards. So I think that is affirmative from all the board members that those standards have been met.
Mhm.
And then we're going to go through the special exceptions criteria and make sure that we can do a full finding of facts for these. So A, the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reasons of sewage, disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation. Mr. Bork.
2 things here that show that the applicant is in full compliance. First being the water filtration system, which has been added to the facility, as well as a thorough cleaning of the sanitation system, septic system, and that has been approved, for the use of the amount of people that she intends to have in this, which is 5 in addition to her family of 3 people, a total of 8 people. So yes, I think this one is fully satisfied.
Mr. Karen.
I agree with the type of usage. I don't see any unsanitary, unhealthful conditions, typical usage of restrooms within a facility. And as Mr. Bork stated, it has been recently cleaned and approved.
Thank you. Ms. Torrance.
I agree with everything that's been said so far.
Thanks.
Yeah, the property's been inspected and the septic's been emptied and can support the amount of use of 5 school-age children in their home.
Right, and being their residents, I would imagine they're going to maintain it and make sure it's properly cared for. So
Right.
all in favor of A being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. B, the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to the existing and foreseeable traffic in the vicinity. Mr. Bork?
Okay, so first of all, there's only 3 vehicles and they'll be staggered. So that's certainly not going to impact vehicular traffic flow in this very quiet residential neighborhood. And it is a small neighborhood. I agree with that, certainly. But we're really talking about just 1 vehicle at a time. And not only that, but you've got a driveway which enables the vehicles to turn around so that they're coming out straight rather than backing out into the street. So I think this one has been certainly met.
Thank you. Mr. Karen?
I have nothing further to add. As the appellant mentioned, the turnaround driveway and the staggered drop off and pickup.
Okay, Ms. Torrance?
I would agree. It's all good.
Mr. Hebert?
I will just add that any additional vehicles, which are minor in this case, operating in the 7:30 or 4:30 hour wouldn't be any different from normal workday, weekday traffic going on in any part of town.
I agree with Mr. Hebert there. So that's yes. So all in favor of B, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require substantially greater degree in municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood.
No impact whatsoever on fire or police.
Mr. Karen,
It sounds as if it's already been reviewed by the fire marshal, so no further concerns.
Ms. Torrance,
I have no concerns over this.
Mr. Hebert,
Mr. Karen kind of nailed it on the head for me. The fire marshal's been through and inspecting it. She's working through the appropriate channels at the state level. And everything seems to be going well. So I have no concerns with this one being met.
I agree. The state licensing procedure is pretty strict in itself. All in favor of C, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes. D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supply. Mr. Bork,
No impact.
Mr. Karen,
I do not see any negative impacts. The perimeter will be updated with a fence and egress through the basement at the bulkhead, but no issues with sediment or erosion.
Ms. Torrance,
Yeah, I don't see any impact to the soil or surrounding topography.
Mr. Hebert,
No, and I agree with what's been stated. Additionally, the applicant stated there's a new water filtration system, and similar to her answer in part A, a newly inspected sewage system that can accommodate the additional children at this house.
I agree. All in favor of D being met. Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development. Mr. Bork,
Yes. Most of the activity will be inside, and during those times when the children are outside, the backyard will be fenced in, a large portion of the backyard. And this is on a large lot, so that should mitigate noise to some extent. And besides that, 5 children is not unusual in a home, especially in neighborhoods like this, which have large lots.
thank you. Mr. Karen,
No further comments.
Ms. Torrance,
As I've said before, I agree with Mr. Bork. I don't think this is an uncommon or disordinary use. I mean, this is very compatible.
Mr. Hebert,
Homes do have fences for kids, for pets, for general appearance. They've converted the bulkhead to a walkout path of egress. And none of these are uncommon, whether this were a child care home or if it was just a normal residential family-only home. And I'll add, they're also not having a sign, again, purposely trying to minimize their impact, physical appearance, physical impact to the local neighborhood.
right, and when we talked about existing uses in the neighborhood and the time of day that people would be coming, it's the time of day where people are coming and going to and from their home and to work and things like that. All in favor of E being met. Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And F is if the property is in a shoreland zone, which it is not. Mr. Bork, you vote yes. Sorry, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Like, yes.
We'll say yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Mr. Torrance, Ms. Torrance.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use. Mr. Bork.
Yes, the applicant has shown evidence of ownership through the tax documentation, as well as I believe there's additional paperwork on the actual sale of the property, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, that has been demonstrated.
Thank you. Mr. Karen,
No further comments.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes, adequately demonstrated.
Mr. Hebert.
Yes, it has been adequately demonstrated. I agree with what's been stated.
Okay. All in favor of G, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions. I know in her synopsis, she gave a background on her education and background and things like that. I don't know if we actually addressed that too much, but Mr. Bork?
Yes, I think the fact that the applicant is already taking proactive steps to comply with all the things that needed to be done, the bulkhead, the fence, just everything that was an issue here that she had to demonstrate. She's already taken the steps to do that and incurred the expense, prior to coming before us. So yes, I think she has.
Thank you. Mr. Karen?
I agree that any concerns regarding financial ability have already been met with regard to the renovations of the basement and house and property. And as you've mentioned, Madam Chair, there is additional information in the synopsis regarding her background and education and past experience working in a similar environment. So no concerns here.
Thank you. Ms. Torrance?
Yeah, I don't have any concerns about her abilities to do this.
Thank you. Mr. Hebert?
Yeah, I don't see any issue with the information that the applicant has provided.
Yes, and there's definitely a need.
Yes.
All in favor of H, Mr. Bork?
Yes.
Mr. Karen?
Yes.
Ms. Torrance?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. I, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation. Mr. Bork?
Well, two things really. Noise levels will really be typical of any household with children. And number two, the hours of operation are during the daytime, during normal business hours, or at times when there's things going on, whether it be business or residential use. That's when things happen. It won't be open at nighttime, so it won't be a nuisance at all.
Thank you. Mr. Karen?
Agreed. Playing outside for a couple hours, or children playing outside for a couple hours in a residential neighborhood should be typical of the neighborhood itself. No concerns with this being met.
Thank you. Ms. Torrance?
I think I've already commented on this enough times. I think it's very normal.
Yep. Mr. Hebert?
I would say this is very similar to, I'll say, natural neighborhood noises that would come from a residential neighborhood with children. And I don't see that whether you have additional children playing in your backyard or not is not going to interrupt with general noise and hours of operation, especially since it's only going to operate between 7:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the afternoon on weekdays.
Yep, and I think as I said earlier, and under one of the other criteria, people are going to be driving through around the same time that people are going to and from work and things like that, not making much of an impact. So all in favor of I being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, yes, I would like to make a motion to approve appeal number 2693, special exception appeal by Brittany Frisco.
I move to second.
Do we have a discussion?
I have a discussion. Before we cast our votes tonight, just one thing I wanted to say is that I would encourage Ms. Frisco to get together with her neighbors, especially right now. It's with both neighbors expressing concerns about what you're going to be putting in next door to them. Try to reconcile some of your differences. Understandably, things change if you've lived in a neighborhood for a long time. And again, this is allowed per the ordinance to operate in this location, assuming they pass through this application process. But people move in and out of neighborhoods all the time, but it's important that people are open, communicate, and are respectful for one another, especially times like today. So I would really encourage Ms. Frisco and for the public for speaking. Thank you for speaking tonight to try to reconcile and amend your differences.
Yes, and I mean, just because we grant this under the Scarborough ordinances, that doesn't mean that, you know, that she's still in violation of the homeowners association thing that's going on in hers. That has nothing to do with what we're deciding this evening. With that being said, Mr. Bork, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
I vote yes.
and I vote yes as well. So the appeal is approved. Congratulations. Good luck. I need like a minute.
Yeah, just say we're going to take a 2-minute
Okay.
recess.
We're going to take a 2-minute recess. I'll be back. Thank you. There we go.
There we go.
Thank you. Okay, so we have our last application for the evening, which is a special exception permit application for 21 Snow Road. So what I'll do first is ask Mr. Longstaff from the town to give us a little information.
Sure. So this again is another home occupation special exception application. This is a single family dwelling on a conforming parcel in the R2 district. The dwelling is conforming with regard to all of the space and bulk requirements. The applicant is here to seek approval to establish a home occupation at the subject property, specifically a one-chair hair salon business in her home within the current footprint of the dwelling, no expansion. I think from there, we would just go through the special exception and home occupation criteria.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. So I don't know if you want to elaborate any more on what Mr. Longstaff said. It seems pretty straightforward.
Probably start with the name. I don't think I.
Kate Libby, nice to meet you. And I want to apologize to everyone because I am not a paper person.
That's
I
okay.
had no idea I was even supposed to come till yesterday.
But you're here.
I am.
That's
And I was
great.
very nervous, but now I'm relaxed.
Don't be. Yeah. you're
All
good.
good.
So I want to apologize for all the paperwork because I'm not good. And I guess I didn't spell this out very well. I work in Portland. I've been there for years. Due to COVID, we've been closed since March, reopened. I've been doing hair years. I've owned it. I've probably been booth renting only the past 5-10 years. A lot of my clients are afraid to go in the shop. I do a lot of older people. So I decided to put a chair in my house. I've contacted the state, but I felt like this was the first step. It's very simple. I know how to open a shop. I know all the parameters. I've got to have the bathroom there, but I haven't started anything because I felt like I needed approval from you guys first. So I
Appreciate
do
that.
know what
Thank
I'm
you.
getting into. I only want to work one day there. I don't know what's going to happen this winter. I'm still working at my other shop.
Okay.
One day a week. I used to work 4. I'm going to work 1 long day there, 1 long day at home,
Okay.
all because of COVID.
Right.
Mm.
Okay.
So that's what I'm looking for, to just put, and really I'm doing nothing to the place except for putting, it's called a wet station. It's
Yep.
a station that you sit at and you can turn around and you can shampoo there too.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
it.
Perfect. So what we'll do now is we'll go through the criteria. If you just want to read your answers, you
Yeah.
can elaborate as you so choose. So we have A, the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reasons of sewage, disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation.
I wrote that it will not. I'm mainly doing haircuts, colors and perms. I'm listening to everyone else and I'm realizing you're talking about water and septic too.
Mhm.
I have public water, but I am on a private septic. We're a big house. When we put an addition on a while ago, they had us draw a design and file it with somewhere in Portland in case our septic fails.
Interesting.
I don't know why we had to do that, but I have
I'm
a
sure Brian
backup
does.
plan.
Yep.
I do have a backup plan that Al Frick drew up years ago.
Yep.
But there's just 2 people living in the house. So I think our septic, we've had no problems.
Perfect.
And we're on public water.
How many bedrooms in your home?
2.
2.
Yeah.
Great.
We've made an addition, but it was 2 bedrooms and then we made a big bedroom. So it's,
And so like the chemicals you use for perms and stuff, that's not, like, that's just stuff you can dump and
Yeah,
that's. in-
right in the trash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, B, the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to the existing and foreseeable traffic in the vicinity.
It will not. We will not have people there 2 at a time. There's a lot of COVID rules right now in the shops. We've got to wear masks and shields.
Right.
You can't have, even though I could have 2 people in there, I am not. A husband and wife maybe, but I am having one
Right.
client at a time. We've got to book off 15 minutes of time to clean
Yep.
everything. So there's not going to be a lot of chairs. So
Yeah.
we have a huge driveway and I heard the other lady turn around, so I added that. I can turn around.
Yep.
We are on a dead end street, a very quiet street,
Yeah.
but
Perfect.
you know.
It's great.
Okay.
All good information.
C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree in municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood.
I do not believe it'll change a thing. There'll be a couple cars going in on Wednesdays.
Right? Okay. D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies.
No, we're doing nothing to the exterior of the house. Just putting in a station, even for the inside, there's no difference.
Right, okay. E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development.
Yep, I don't know that there's any other home businesses the back of us abuts Bailey's Campground. So everybody there's used to a business, although it's not on our road.
Right. Let's say F,
Not
not in
located
the
in the
shoreline
shoreline.
zone.
I can verify that.
G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use.
Yep, we own the house.
H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of the section.
I believe so. I think the only major thing we'd ever possibly bump into is sewer. And we've got a backup plan and
Right. And as you said,
we'll have to pay for
it's
it.
once a week and it's customers
Exactly.
spread out.
Yeah.
It seems very low.
And even though it's a salon, I'm not going to be using a lot of water. The clients that are coming there, a lot of my weeklies that I do shampoos and sets are, they're still going to be going to the shop. These are people I might do a color on. I mean, I don't know. I'll definitely be using the water, but it's not going to be like
Right.
a shop that
Crazy.
has high water. Yeah.
Okay. What are we on? I, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and operation of hours.
Yeah, I have told my clients, because I'm cutting down to 2 days, that I'm happy to work long days, any hours they want. But I am a human and needs my sleep, so,
Right.
you know, even when I work crazy, 10 o'clock would be late, 6 o'clock in the morning is crazy early to me. So they're gonna be normal hours.
Okay. So did the board have any questions for her before we dive into the home occupation criteria?
Just one quick one I have. Your, the hair shampoos, conditioners, the coloring, that stuff is all purchased, that can be purchased commercially, like off the shelf. Someone could go to a store and buy that. So it's a normal, I'll say,
People can't buy the coloring we have at the firms have.
okay,
They're professional. But
Okay.
people can buy over the counter other types of coloring stuff, yes.
okay. Just wanted to check for like that, so that, the stuff that just say normal people can't buy, that's all still safe to use and either dump down a sink or throw out or,
Definitely safe to use because we use it in a commercial shop. You know,
Okay.
it's definitely safe for sewers and all that kind of
Disposal,
stuff.
yep.
I have grandkids. I'm certainly not going to leave it where they can grab it and eat it.
Sure.
But it's safe,
good enough.
I hope. Or I'll be growing a
So
third
we've been
ear
told
because I've
this
been doing it
so
a long
far,
time.
right?
Exactly.
Okay. Did the board member have any other questions before I get to the home occupation? Didn't look like it. So I think probably as you saw now from the last application, we have a whole nother set of criteria that you have to go through for the home business application. And so what I'll do is just ask you the questions and you can just answer them the best you can. Okay?
Mhm.
So number one, the occupation or profession shall be carried on wholly within the principal building or within a building accessory thereto.
Yes.
Two, the home occupation shall be clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling unit for residential purposes.
Yes.
You had indicated you guys have lived there for a long time, yes?
No.
Oh, no.
Maybe 3 years.
Oh, okay. But that's your residence.
Yes.
And three, no more than one person who is not a resident of the dwelling unit shall be employed in the home occupation.
Yep.
And it's just going to be you,
Just going to be me.
correct?
Yeah. Again, this is because of COVID.
Right.
And my kids are so crazy. I'm lucky I can have somebody walk in my house in this area. So, I mean, that really is limiting.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
Hear
want
ya.
anyone in.
Number four, exterior signage shall be permitted in accordance with the home occupation sign provisions. Are you going to do a sign?
No, I wasn't planning on it. However, then when I came in here, I got all nervous and I started looking at things, because I have emails with the state, and I think they want us to mark our door.
Okay.
So I probably am gonna have to put something small on the
Yeah.
door.
Sure.
My address will be on the mailbox, but I'm
Right.
not planning on,
Right.
no.
Yep,
But I might put something, this is the entrance, because I was
Yep.
surprised when it said in home, mark the door.
Okay.
If you do want to have a exterior sign, you just have to talk to Brian.
Yeah.
Those dimensions, size, where it
Yeah.
could go, all spelled out.
Okay.
Okay, number 5, there shall be no exterior display, no exterior storage of materials, and no other exterior indication of the home occupation or variation from the residential character of the principal building.
Yep.
6, no nuisance shall be generated, included but not necessarily limited to offensive noise, vibration, smoke, dust, odors, heat, or glare.
Yep.
7, the traffic generated by such home occupation shall not increase the volume of traffic so as to create a traffic hazard or disturb the residential character of the immediate neighborhood.
Yes.
Number 8, in addition to off-street parking provided to meet the normal requirements of the dwelling, adequate off-street parking shall be provided for the vehicles of each employee and of the vehicles of the maximum number of users or customers the home occupation may attract during peak operating hours.
Plenty of parking.
Discussed, you made that clear, that won't be an issue. So number 9 is the home occupation may utilize no more than 20% of the dwelling unit floor area. So before we kind of go into what that is, let's talk about your house. I don't think we have a,
I think I got a picture just at the front. Did I send, I thought I sent the floor plan in the
Yep.
downstairs.
you did, sorry.
And
I
then there's a
apologize, I
whole
thought that.
upstairs on top of that.
That's
Yep.
perfect. So no more than 20% of the dwelling unit floor area can be used.
And I've looked at it, it's about 153
Yeah,
square
it's
feet
such
out
a
there.
small area, there's no way that's approaching anywhere near 20% of that.
Fair
And
enough.
I even measured the bathroom in with that. It's a very small area. It's our
Right.
mudroom.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't want anyone in the house. So it's like a small little
Yep.
spot.
There it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Good.
Number 10, home occupation may include retail sales. Are you going to be selling products?
Probably not.
No, because there are limitations about total area devoted to retail sales is limited to 400 square feet.
Oh. Believe me, I'll have a shelf like this and
Yeah.
I'm sure, I'm not a big salesperson.
Right.
I don't sell at the shop. I can't imagine it being different here.
Yeah, I don't think that's why you're
I'll
doing
pick
that.
things up for people, sell it for them what I pick.
Okay, so number 11 and 12 don't apply.
Because you're not a lobsterman or fisherwoman
No,
And you're not motor vehicle repairs.
or a towing business.
or what?
A towing business.
No.
Good.
Okay, so this is at the end of snow is what you said? This is a dead
About
end there?
midway. It's a dead end. Yeah, we're about midway, a little less than midway down. Yeah.
Did the board have any questions for her in regards to this criteria?
No,
Everybody's tired.
That's the great thing
I like
about going
coming on
last.
Mr. Hebert? No?
I don't have any questions. Mike, I asked my questions earlier about
Yeah.
the shampoo, so I was fine.
No,
I'm fine with that.
Very minimally impact sort of situation here.
Yep.
So what I'll do is at this time, I will open it up to the public and see if there's anyone who is here to speak tonight, and we have no one in attendance.
I don't see any hands going up.
We did not receive any letters or angry
My
emails
neighbor
or
texts,
books
"How's it going?"
about your
No,
occupation.
Didn't receive any emails.
Good.
Which is nice. So then we'll close the public section. And now what the board do is we're going to go through and do our finding of facts and conclusions of law. And like what we did last time, I would like to vote as a whole on the home occupation criteria. And I feel that she's done a good job at meeting those, and I'd like to put that up as one and vote as it together. Mr. Bork,
yes,
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrens,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert.
I vote yes. I mean, she answered all the questions clearly on the record, so I have
Yes.
no concerns.
It's a very minimally impact
know.
sort of situation here, one day a week
Yeah.
during COVID,
Yeah.
just treating normal customers and
Yeah.
clientele. So all in favor of the home occupation? Oh, no, we did that. So yes, I agree. So those are met.
Yep.
And now we will go through the special exception criteria. I just lost. So A, the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthy conditions by reasons of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation. Mr. Bork?
No significant impact whatsoever, so I think this one's been met.
Mr. Karen?
Agreed. As the appellant stated earlier, the chemicals that would be associated with any of the hair products or services are safe to go down the drains of residents or commercial and have no issues with the sewer system.
Thank you. Ms. Torrance?
Well, as the daughter of a salon owner, and I'm quite familiar with these chemicals. In fact, I've been known to get them and bring them home and do my own hair. But so I can attest to that probably the chemicals she's using are safer than what you would normally buy over the counter in the grocery store or drugstore. I can guarantee that. And I see no impact on what she's doing whatsoever to the environment.
Thank you. Mr. Hebert?
I'll just add that she's in a 2-bedroom home, so she's in a septic system that has been sized for a 2-bedroom home, or rather, if when it eventually fails, there is a plan in place to size that for a 2-bedroom home, which usually accommodates about 4 people, and only 2 people are living here. So by having a single person in and out on occasion for a hair salon appointment is not very impactful to existing water or sewer at the house. So I agree.
I agree as well. I think the board pretty much hit all the points there. So all in favor of A, Mr. Bork?
Yes.
Mr. Karen?
Yes.
Ms. Torrance?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert?
Yes, I keep trying to raise my hand, but I know we're not doing that
I
right now.
vote yes as well. B, the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to the existing and foreseeable traffic in the vicinity. Mr. Bork?
Yeah, 1 car at a time, 1 day a week. Yeah, this is really nothing. And in a long driveway, easy to turn around. I don't see any problem here at all. So yes, this one's been met.
Mr. Karen?
Agreed. Image provided with the application showing the driveway and the aerial view.
Great. Ms. Torrance?
Yeah, I think the applicant did a very good job showing that this was going to be a safe for vehicular traffic. And
Mr. Hebert?
Yeah, I have no concern with this. I agree. Again, only 2 folks are living here now. That's 2 vehicles. It wouldn't be any different if they had like a child with them that drove a car, or a couple children that drove a car or 2. So the vehicular impact here is very minimal.
Yeah, it's going to have no impact really at all. So all in favor of B, Mr. Bork?
Yes.
Mr. Karen?
Yes.
Ms. Torrance?
yes.
Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood, or create a substantially greater degree in municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood. Mr. Bork?
No impact whatsoever.
Mr. Karen?
Agreed. Nothing further to add.
Ms. Torrance?
Agreed.
Mr. Hebert?
Yeah, I agree. Based on their clientele, they're only seeing 1 person at a time, so you're not going to have multiple people there, multiple vehicles, and very, very minimal risk of requiring municipal fire or police protection.
Right, it's not really substantially different than having someone over your house.
I'd like to know if she's ever had any dryer fires.
Not yet.
Don't say that.
All in
I
favor
didn't
of
mean to jinx you.
Yeah.
all in favor of C being met, Mr. Bork?
Yes.
Mr. Karen?
Yes.
Ms. Torrance?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies. Mr. Bork?
No, everything's inside and no impact on water supplies at all.
Mr. Karen,
Agreed. Discussed this concerns earlier, and nothing further to add.
Ms. Torrance,
Agreed. Everything's been stated so far.
Mr. Hebert,
I agree. They've, again, repeat what I said earlier, their septic system is more than adequate and sized adequately to accommodate the current residents as well as any clients that she would wish to bring into her home.
right, and again, it's 1 day a week. So I'm not sure how much of an effect that would have. So all in favor of D being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development. Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
I'm sorry, is this the vote or discussion?
It's really the discussion at this point.
Okay.
discussion, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
You're
Just,
right.
sorry.
We're letter
I do
E.
not have any concerns with this one. It will be contained within the house, very small footprint, no visual impact from the exterior or neighbors, so no concerns.
Ms. Torrance,
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this is going to be much different than somebody coming over for coffee and visiting for a little while and then leaving.
right. Mr. Hebert,
I agree. I have nothing to add.
yeah, I agree with the board. All in favor of E, Mr. Bork,
Sorry about that, Rudy. So my answer is yes.
he said
Yes,
yes.
here.
Yes.
Mr. Karen, Ms.
Yes.
Torrance, I'm way off. Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Okay. Located in a shoreland zone.
She's not in the shoreline.
Not in the shoreland zone. G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or,
Probably still need.
okay. Mr. Bork, shoreland zone. She met that criteria to not be in it. Yes. Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Are we sure? Maybe yes.
yes,
Okay,
that's that.
thank you.
G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use.
Yes, that's been demonstrated.
Mr. Karen,
Agreed. It sounds as if there's been extensive experience over many years. No concern.
We're on the right title and interest. but
Title
yes,
interest.
She did provide a,
Miss
she did provide a property tax
Yeah.
bill that indicates. that
Ms.
she's-
Torrance,
Yes, I think she's demonstrated sufficient interest in the property.
Mr. Hebert,
Yeah, tax bill's there. It says that they own it.
agreed. So all in favor of G being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section. Mr. Bork.
Absolutely. With all the experience the applicant brings with her, she certainly has the experience and capability of being able to do this.
Thank you. Mr. Karen,
Nothing further to add.
Ms. Torrance,
Nothing further.
Mr. Hebert.
I don't have anything to add to this one. I agree.
Right, I mean, as the applicant said tonight, she's already working another job. This is just to satisfy customers almost and be able to get that time. I agree. All in favor of H being met?
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrance,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. I, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and operations of hours.
Yes, nobody will know what's going on.
Mr. Karen,
Agreed. No concern.
Ms. Torrance,
Agreed.
Mr. Hebert,
Agree. The applicants say they're going to have one car at a time. So it's very normal, not outside the realm of any other regular operation at a home with friends visiting or family.
Right. Seems pretty normal. All in favor of aye, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrens,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Do we have a motion?
You're muted,
Oh, you're
David.
muted, Dave, Mr. Bork.
Dave or David is fine. Thank you. Madam Chair, motion to approve appeal number 2694, a special exception appeal by Catherine J. Libby.
I move to second.
Any discussion? All in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrens,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. The application is approved.
Congratulations.
Congrats and good luck.
Thank you. And thank everyone because
Hey.
you made it easy. I was so
Yeah.
nervous.
Just make sure you
Well,
get your
that's
building, you
Mary.
get your building permit to install your sink in your chair.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
He's being mean. Don't tease. It's too late at night for that.
Do I need one?
Yes.
Okay, when she said your teeth.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Enough
much.
info for
Take
one.
care.
Have a good evening.
Good luck.
You too.
Thanks so
Thanks.
much.
Okay, so we need to approve the minutes and
From-
finding of facts from last month, or the last couple of months.
Yeah, we've got June, July, and August, no.
Just June and
Yes,
July.
June and July, we didn't meet in August.
Yeah.
Um,
And we have some decisions, I think, too.
Yep.
Final decisions.
Okay, so we have the approval of the minutes. So let's first do the June 10th, 2020 minutes. We have June
Yep.
and July.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the June 10th, 2020 meeting as presented.
I'll move to second.
All in favor? Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrens,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the meeting minutes from July 8th, 2020 as presented.
I'll move to second.
All in favor?
Any
Mr.
discussion?
Oh, any discussion?
Seeing none.
Okay, all in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrens,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I'm abstaining.
Oh, that's right, too.
All right, so then we have the approval of the draft written decision for appeal number 2690, special exemption for 26 Winnick's Neck Road.
Yep.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
motion to approve the draft written decision for appeal heard on the July 8th, 2020 meeting, appeal number 2690, special exception appeal by Brian Woodbury.
I'll second that.
All in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrens,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I'm going to abstain. That passes. And then we have appeal number 2691, limited reduction of yard size appeals by Philip and Teresa von Stad at 9 Fields Way from the July 8th meeting.
Madam Chair, motion to approve appeal number 2691, limited reduction in yard size appeal by Philip and Therese von Stad at 9 Fieldways.
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Ms. Torrens,
Yes.
Mr. Hebert,
Yes.
and I abstain. I believe that was all
That
that we
does
had
it.
for approve.
That does it.
So I don't know if anyone had any questions. My understanding is our meeting next month is going to be completely virtual.
Yes,
How
Madam
effective
Chair,
that is.
I've been told that chambers, the chambers here will be in use for voting, absentee voting and whatnot,
Oh, right.
early voting. So we'll be meeting totally virtually next month. And then we'll see what the month of November brings.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brian.
I appreciate everybody's patience with this. This is definitely different. Doreen's done a good job downstairs. She's downstairs at
Yeah,
the
nice
controls.
job, Doreen.
And I'm just fumbling around here trying to figure out where stuff is, but, thanks. I want to thank the chair and vice chair for being here in person. That kind of is different and new and fun, but maybe not so much fun, but
It's new and different.
it's new and different.
Did you want to say something, Dave?
I do. A question for Brian concerning the tabled appeal number 2695.
Yes, sir.
Could you please explain the status of that and why it was tabled?
The applicant's representative simply emailed me and said that based on my staff comments, they had some things that they need to reconsider. And they may want to determine whether they want to go forward with the variance request or if they want to modify it in some way. So they just needed to regroup. I guess I raised some issues that they weren't aware of or weren't prepared to address. So.
And I can appreciate that, Brian. I mean, the better prepared that the applicants are,
Yeah.
makes it that much easier
I mean,
for everybody.
that's the purpose of those staff comments is I'm not trying to pick on people or anything like that. I tried to do my best at reviewing the application and picking up on things that don't make sense or maybe need further clarification, or perhaps, I go into the files and other people don't have access to those files, but I go into that property file and look and I see things and I want to raise those issues if it doesn't make sense with what they're presenting. And that's just one of those situations, I think, where they just wanted to regroup, and I actually welcomed them to table it because we had a pretty busy agenda tonight. And with this hybrid meeting system, I think it's just better the fewer the better, actually. So.
I agree.
Brian, I certainly agree with that too. In fact, perhaps they'll come forward with a better appeal now. And that's good for everybody.
Yeah, I think it can only improve, hopefully improve their presentation or their appeal, and we'll see what they come up with.
Sounds good.
All right. So I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
All in favor? Yep.
Yep.
Meeting is adjourned.